What's happening, YouTubes? Let's see. I think the mic's working. I don't know. We're trying StreamYard today. We're going to try StreamYard again. Whether it works or not, we don't know. Anthony Bress, what's going on? Driving for dollars. Must be having technical difficulties. Hey, man, it's StreamYard. What can you say? What can you say? I got to figure out on here how you even enter a comment. Anybody know how to use this thing? You know how to use it?
No, I don't know how.
Chat privately with your guest. I don't know. Let's see. Done. Send that. Did the link go up for StreamYard? I don't know how to use this garbage. Is this thing? Post a comment. Maybe that's it. I think my other stuff I use is way better than StreamYard will ever be. But hey, you know, when you're mobile, we'll just do the mobile. There you go. So there's your connection if you want to join in. There it is. We're talking rate per mile. I got the Dean on the phone because the Dean's working. Right, Dean?
That's right.
That's right. So if you run your business by rate per mile in this business, you could be out of business. Does that make any sense to people? You could be out of business. Does that make sense to you, Dean?
It does.
Because how do you know glam camping, says Greg Zimmer. Greg, how do you know where I'm at? How do you know what your rate per mile is? John Armstrong's being, you know, he's saying, Dean who? He says, Dean works. Who knew? That's what he says.
That's funny. That's funny.
So if you want to join in, there's a StreamYard. We'll try to add you as a guest. If you want to argue the fact that you need to know rate per mile, which put it this way, it will put you out of business. Because let me ask you a question. Dean, let me ask you a question. If you were going by rate per mile, what would you say some guys would say that they need to, you know, make it?
$3.
$3.
$2.50.
Okay, let's say they say $3. That means if they don't find $3 a mile that day, do they work?
Some will not.
Some will not. So then they find $3 the next day. Is that what they really need? Is $3?
No, because they need yesterday's when they didn't work.
They didn't work, but they don't do that. They say, "Oh, I found $3," and they roll on. But what's it $3 on? How many miles?
Exactly. That's what I was just gonna say. So what if you're based at $3? $3 on what? Like, how do you come up with a business plan on rate per mile? It's
right.
Pretty hard to do that. Just my opinion, but because it fluctuates, and you don't have any control over rate per mile. You have zero control over rate per mile, but you have 100% control over revenue per day. Because all you got to do is run the numbers and look for the loads that will cover your revenue per day.
Exactly. So, in other words, if you do a search and you just put $3 a mile in, or that's what you're looking for, you might have 20 loads to pick from. And if you put in $2 a mile, you might have 1,000 loads to pick from. But you overlook all those loads because why? Why do they overlook it, Dean?
It's not $3 a mile.
It's not $3 a mile. So, for instance, if you got $3 a mile for 200 miles, it's $600. But then some guy would take it for 100 miles for $300. Well, I'm getting $3 a mile. But if their cost per day is $400,
short.
They're short. But they don't know it because
tomorrow you need $350.
But they don't know they're short. Why? I got my $3 a mile.
Right.
Right.
So then how do you figure out what you actually need per day if you're just doing a rate per mile? So, how do you come up with a family budget? How do you come up with a business budget on rate per mile? Because
it's all estimated, right? Because what they do is they say, well, I'm gonna estimate, because on rate per mile, folks, you got to estimate it on a certain mileage per month. 10,000 miles, 12,000 miles. What is it?
right.
And if you say 10,000 miles, and let's say you only do 6,000 miles that month, but you made your $3, so actually you need 30 grand, but you only made 18 grand. You're 12,000 in the hole, but you made your $3. Right? You see how you can go out of business pretty fast and not even know it?
Too many what ifs with rate per mile.
What ifs. Now, if you do cost per day, there's no what ifs there. As long as you work that day and you make your cost, you're good. And if you make way more than your cost, that'll catch up all the days that you might go in the shop, an unexpected breakdown. Can we agree on that, Dean?
Absolutely.
So, for instance, if Dean needs $300 per day and he does a $1,200 run and he nets 1,000, he just got 3 days in one. Did you not?
Yeah.
He did. So if he works all week, and let's say he does that all week, so he needs $1,500 that week for five days times 300, but he made 600, so he made $3,000. He's got all next week's in the bag already. But if he was rate per mile and he made his $3, and then the next week he's in the shop all week, what's he need that next week? Is it $3 or is it $6?
Might be 9.
Maybe 9. Don't know. Too many variables in rate per mile. Too many variables. And what's rate per mile do to you, Dean? What's it do to you when you look at a load board? What does rate per mile do to you?
Well, it handcuffs you.
Right.
Because you're just looking for. If you just look by rate per mile, it's going to cut a lot of loads out of the load board for you. Unless you're running short, but then again, though, if you're looking to maximize your dollars, especially now with the market that we're in, if you want to run short, that's fine, depending on what you need. But it's a lot of money in the mid-range game too. So
right,
you don't have a lot of options. Your options are very limited if you're just going to focus on rate per mile.
Thor and Thunder Trucking says, I've got a cost per day, per week, and per month. I set my daily well above my needs. If a day falls off or gives me half a rate, I'm still good. Bingo.
That's right.
Still good. He's got it down.
That's right. And so the business is either going to control you or you're going to control your business, i.e., you want the brokers to control you or are you going to control the brokers? So, because if you know what you need per day, you have a lot more leverage with the brokers when it comes to negotiating.
Right.
And you can use my favorite word, time, in there. Because how do you factor in time with rate per mile? It's impossible.
It's impossible. You can't factor in time. You can factor in time all day long with cost per day. All day long. Because it doesn't matter how long it takes you. If you're
a rate per mile guy and you tell a broker, I need $3 a mile, but then you get delayed and time, how are you going to equate the downtime into rate per mile to come up with a fair number, what you're worth when it comes to detention or anything else? That's going to be pretty difficult. But if you have a revenue per day, now you can go to the broker, you have some leverage, And to me, that just makes more sense. To me, that's just my opinion.
Right, because let's say, you get to a receiver and they didn't make an appointment. And they say, okay, well, you got to wait 2 days. And they only give you $250 each day. Your rate per mile is out the window. But if you have $250 cost per day, it doesn't really matter. You're covered. Like John Armstrong needs $300 per day for his crypto addiction. Well, if he gets $350 layover, because that's most layovers is $350. So if the guy says, oh, well, we couldn't get you an appointment for 2 more days, but we're paying you $350 layover each day, John doesn't care. He's got his crypto addiction, plus he's got 50 extra bucks. He can buy me and Dean. Well, you're only going to get one ribeye at $50 with today's prices, right?
That's right.
Just Trucking, what's up? He doesn't fire up his truck for less than $20. Oh, he says a mile. $20. A couple fruit food drinks, right? A couple frappuccinos.
Hey, that's it. Now we're talking. Starbucks.
What's up, PJ? What's happening? PJ likes to make at least 800 a day when I'm running. Right. I mean, you got a certain amount. But if you go by cost per mile or rate per mile, you don't know what you really need. I mean, yeah, it's great. Oh, I made $4 a mile. I only went 100 miles. That might not get you what you need.
Think about this, Jeff. So a lot of guys say, well, you need to get what you're worth, right?
Right.
So if that is truly the case, and we're out here and everybody says, oh, don't haul cheap freight. If you have a revenue per day that you need, and I would venture to say most guys want to make $7,000 to $1,000 a day, $700 to $1,000 a day. But why should that change? And it won't change if we're all on the same page.
Right.
And it's much easier to be on the same page when you do revenue per day than rate per mile. Because revenue per day, I mean, if we all need $700 to $1,000, or if that's what we want, then we're the ones that can really control the market instead of the broker. Again, it goes back to who's going to control your business, you or them.
Right. Just Trucking says cost per day is key. Absolutely. Because owning a business, it doesn't matter if you're trucking, if you're retail, you make sub sandwiches, it doesn't matter what you do. Every business has a cost per day.
Hold on, I'll be back, Jeff.
You have a fixed cost. Sorry, it's 10 p.m. I got to get some sleep. What do you get sleep for, John? You don't need any sleep. Anybody want to join in? You got the StreamYard thing. You can click on it, do whatever. We're using StreamYard because we're not at home. We don't have the computer. Got a laptop, but we're not going to use that. So I had to re-up my membership with StreamYard so I could do this video, right? Just for you guys, because I was talking to a few people about, they kept saying rate per mile, and how much money they need and everything. And it's not the way. Not the way to run a business in trucking, because the rate per mile is, like I said, it's got way too many variables. You don't know if you're going to do those miles. You gotta base it on something. You got to base it on so many miles a month. If you don't do those miles, then your rate per mile is out the window. It's higher than what you thought. And then if you do, a lot more miles, of course, it lowers. But you got the what if. That's why your rate per day, cost per day, however you want to say it, you figure it all out. You know exactly what you need. So that's what you do. How can you order a brand new rig nowadays in this market? Well, the Dean has a new rig in this market. You can order it. You just got to be willing to run. But see, you can't base. See, here's where a lot of people are going to make mistakes. I was telling Ken that you can have a new rig in this market. You can order one, but you got to have discipline. And what I mean by that is you cannot do your cost per day or figure out what it is in this market. This market. Right, Dean?
That's right. You
cannot
do a business plan on today's numbers.
On today's numbers. You got to be really, really conservative. So, like in today's numbers, it's $4 or $5 a mile, $3.50. If you're in the Midwest, that's all day long, and people are basing it on that. Well, when this market takes a dump, and it's going to take a dump, you won't see those rates. And then all of a sudden, oh, I got to run for $2 a mile. Yeah, you do.
Right, $2 a mile is a fair number going forward, just because everything's kind of changing.
Yeah, so we can't find any new trucks. Well, Ken, there's new trucks out there. Just might not be the brand or the one you want. There's still some new Internationals. There's some Macs out there. There's a couple Volvos. There's still some Kenworths out there. Hard to find, but they're out there. Now, trailer's a different story. You can find a trailer. They might say they got one, but they don't have one. Gus says $500 per day to keep the doors open. You know, Gus, that's a lot of money, $500 a day. If you got one truck, one trailer, and it's a regular truck and a regular trailer, which I mean, you know, you don't have something astronomical like a, you know, huge sundowner sleeper and all this other stuff and overpriced trailer and all this other garbage. That's a lot, isn't it, Dean? $500 a day, that's a lot.
Is that before or after fuel?
Yeah. Do you live in a mansion? And how many days is that? Is that on a 30 day? Because that's $15,000.
Is he including fuel in that, or is that before fuel?
I don't know. See, I do it all. I do all the cost per day without fuel. You don't include fuel because you don't know your fuel burn per day. It just depends on the load. So that tells you how to look at the load. For example, if the Dean says, "What's your cost per day, Dean, before fuel?"
$332.
So Dean's cost per day is $332 before fuel. So what that means is, if the Dean sees a load that's 100 miles for $600, he can take that and be profitable. Because if he gets 5 miles a gallon, that's 20 gallons at $60. You know, take the 60 from that, so that's $540. He only needs $320, right, Dean?
Well, $332.
$332. Yeah. So he's 200 and some change, 208 to the good. Past his cost per day. So you always figure it out before fuel because you don't know what your fuel is. That is the variable.
Unknown.
That's your variable in cost per day is fuel. That way you can look at a load. You can look at a load and say, okay, here's a $2 a mile load. And if you got a rate per mile guy that says I need $3, he's not going to take that load. But let's say his cost per day is really $332 like Dean's. And let's say it's $2 a mile going 400 miles. Well, he's going to pass by all those, but the Dean could take it because he's cost per day guy. He says, okay, that's $800. I'm using 40 gallons of fuel at 5 miles per gallon. That's $120 at $3 a gallon. So 120 off of 800 is 680. I'm not going too fast for you guys, am I? 680 minus 332, $358 to the good, which is another day of Dean's plus 26. Right, Dean?
That's right.
Y'all follow that? 5 miles per gallon. What's he driving? A W900? How do you know, Freightliner Classic? What are you driving? A W9? He knew just by the numbers we're talking. But no, wait, there's more. Sounds like one of those. Wait, there's more. There's some W900 long nose guys out there on YouTube saying they're getting 9 miles a gallon. And I got oceanfront property. I'm going to sell those folks.
Yeah. There ain't no way.
What else we got? Oh, yes, we're all following, says Eddie. Well, Eddie, you're a businessman. Of course you're following. I was going to slow it down for the non-business individuals.
Well, yeah, take this. So a guy goes to Florida.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say a guy goes to Florida. You can pick anywhere. Say, pick Wyoming. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
You get a good rate going in, right? And a lot of people say, oh, I'm not going to pull that cheap freight out. So they deadhead.
Right.
So if you deadhead, it doesn't matter where you're at in the country. You take a load. In my opinion, you don't deadhead all the way out. I mean, if you have to deadhead to go get a load, that's fine. But look, the best way to mitigate your losses on that is grab something and then take both loads. You divide them into two, and there you go. If you got a good rate going in, if you're a revenue per day guy, you should already know, hey, I'm $300 a day extra wherever I'm at. Even if you take something for $1.75, let's say, but you add that total number into that prior load, marry the two together, divide by two, you're still going to come out way ahead. But if you do rate per mile, hell, I don't know where you could go, because you can't stray too far from home. Because if you do, you're never going to get $3 a mile. Not every load is never going to happen.
Not going to happen unless you stay in the Midwest only.
Right.
You got to stay in a really tight box to get that every single load.
So you're going to you'll run yourself into the ground trying to do that day in, day out. I mean, let's say you want to do it every day, right? Just get that $3.50 a mile, $4 a mile, $5 a mile.
Right.
You got to drive, unload, book loads, look for loads. And then if you get, held up somewhere, well, now the rest of your week could be just a big pile of, unpleasant stuff. So, and then you just got to, now you got to try to make it up. And yeah, that's tough. I've done it, and it can be done, but it's just more difficult.
Right. So let's see here. Eddie says, I deadhead. I'd rather get a good market than waste a day and a half in a bad area. Right, Eddie. Sometimes deadhead can be a friend, right? I don't look at deadhead bad. Some people say, well, I'm not deadhead no more 100 miles, or they got this deadhead thing in their mind. So what happens is they add the deadhead into the other miles, and the rate is nowhere near what they need, but then they try to get the rate. And it's like, well, you can't get the rate because the brokers don't care if you got to go 500 miles to get the load. That's not their problem.
Right.
But if you figure that in there and you want the rate, they're never going to give you that rate, because if you say it's $3 a mile, for instance, and it's 1,000 miles, that's $3,000, right? And the load's paying $2 a mile, right? At a 500 miles, it's $1,000. They're not gonna take and sit there and go, oh, well, he's dead in 500 miles to get to my 500 mile load. I'm not paying them that extra money like that. They're not gonna do it. Makes no sense.
No, but that's a good point, Jeff. So, and a lot of guys say that, well, I'm not going to deadhead. And of course, if you add your deadhead in there, your rate per mile
goes down.
Get destroyed.
It gets destroyed.
But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you get the revenue per day, who cares what your rate per mile is? Bingo.
It doesn't matter, because all it is fuel.
Right. And your time.
Fuel and your time.
As long as it works in your revenue per day and your
That's
time.
all that matters.
Does it matter that you had to deadhead 150 miles, 200 miles? It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Not at all. Just like I had one of our guys down in Florida, and he says, well, I want to go back to Indiana. Well, there's $1 a mile in Florida, right where he's at, all the way up there. So it paid like $1,250, but he deaded halfway up, 600 miles up there to Kentucky, grabbed a load from Kentucky, 600 miles up, and that load paid him almost $2,000.
Right.
So what's better? Deadhead all the way up there, got really good fuel miles, and still made $800 more what the load out of Florida was paying to go to the same place.
Right. And if you would have grabbed a load in that scenario, maybe it wouldn't be there, because of your time getting loaded, unloaded, the drive time, blah, blah, blah. Those things matter. So
right.
Sometimes deadhead is just better.
That's right. Sometimes it's better. But see, that you can't add your deadhead in there into the rate when you're dealing with the broker, because the broker doesn't care. It's not his problem. Because he'll say, well, I'll just wait for a guy that's only 5 miles away.
Well, the only time it will matter is if you post your truck, they call you.
Right, exactly.
And then you try to, you play the game, and then they pay for your deadhead. But that's honestly, that doesn't happen very often. I've had it happen once or twice, but not very often. And I think the other thing is, look, a lot of guys will say, well, I'm in a certain area. There's no freight. I'm just going to deadhead.
Right.
And the analogy that I'll use, if anybody's ever been in sales, a lot of people are going to say, oh, these leads are terrible, or these leads are old, they're used up, or there's nobody to call. Well, we're traveling salespeople, right? Basically. Well, there's always a load. Right? The leads aren't bad. It doesn't matter if it's COVID. It doesn't matter. I always found a load. Did I have to work harder and struggle longer? Sure. But there's always freight. You can find something.
Tire Kill says good evening, Pete. And then Freight Shaker Classic XL says, the man, the myth, the legend, Snorlord in the house, folks. What's going on, buddy? Snorlord in the house. I need to come on here and join in. He loves StreamYard. Here it is. Michael Dow, I got your voicemail a little late. Just heard it. I'm live now, so probably call you tomorrow. He should come on here and play his guitar. Right? He should play a little bass or something for us, don't you think? He should do a little strumming.
Sure.
Eddie says, I grab a load from Atlanta for $1,000, then get a load back to Ohio for $1,800. Back in Cincinnati, I'm $6K, more for the round Cincinnati to Jacksonville, and back to Cincy. Now, my sleeper, dude, this sleeper is 40 feet long. It's a great sleeper. Tire Cut want to know how big. You want to know how big the sleeper was that I'm in? It's 40 feet long.
That's a real sleeper.
Yeah, it's a real sleeper. Yeah. What else is going on? Okay, so, but you'll still have people argue. Well, rate per mile. You need that rate per mile. Okay.
Yeah.
And then here's another thing. I made a comment on Facebook. I shouldn't have made the comment on Facebook. That's as bad as YouTube, right? I mean, everybody's going to have an opinion, especially if you're over at the Big Blue Star, right? I mean, you know how it is, the Big Blue Star, right? So a gentleman buys a truck with the huge sleeper, right? So this truck cost $250, $350, somewhere in there. And it weighs, Dean, he showed his weight ticket. The steer axle has 14,000 pounds on it. Nothing in the box. 14,000 pounds. And I said, well, you better make sure it's got the right tires on it for 14,000 pounds, because that is what's going to happen to you. Go across DOT scales, and if you got 7,000 pound tires on the front, that's 14, and now you're 14.2, they give you a ticket. Even though you have 14,000 pound axle, or you're higher, if you don't have the tires for it, because they'll go by tire rating.
So what would you need, a 16 ply tire on that? What would you need?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to have something good, and then of course there's air pressure too. The higher air pressure, you can haul a little more weight on the tires, right? So you go from 105 up to 120. But then if you got the right DOT, like in Michigan, they're gonna measure across the tread, and they got a formula. And if it doesn't match it, guess what happens? But here's the thing: he's limiting himself to loads. So if he's on a special account over there at the Big Blue Star, right, Snorlord, Snorlord was there. If you're on a special account, that truck's okay. But if they lose that account, you got to run regular freight. Well, if you're 42,000 pounds, you can only haul 38. I mean, you're cutting half the loads out.
Right.
You're limiting your business. You're putting, it's like having a three-legged horse in a race.
You break it up.
What up?
What's up,
Lord?
Jeff? What's up?
Not much, man. Are you hurting your business having a truck that's 41,000 pounds?
What?
Are you hurting your
How do
business?
you handle your business?
Yeah, are you hindering your business, your ability to make money if your truck and trailer weighs 42,000 pounds?
Absolutely. If you're running generic dry van freight, I mean,
At the Big Blue Star.
Hell.
If you're at the Big Blue Star, are you hindering your ability to make money?
oh, definitely. Just being at the Big Blue Star.
Right, just being there. Because look at everything they charge you.
Because you might, okay, so it's not a bash on Landstar, but you look at, let's say you're in Dallas, Texas, and you're looking for loads under 30,000 pounds. There might be 100, but if you have access to the spot market, you might have 300.
Right.
That are under 30,000, with which is what you're going to need under 35. The only way that you can make it with a heavy truck like that at Landstar is if you're doing specialized, and it's going to be light. So you have to get in good with an agent. You have to work the system, and realize that the best loads aren't going to be on that load board. So
right. So like if you get on the Boeing account and you're hauling jet engines, you're good because they don't weigh.
Yeah.
They don't going to weigh much.
right.
Or something like that, specialized freight.
Mm-hmm.
But if they lose that specialized freight, I mean, you're just bumming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've learned that you can't limit yourself. Like, I'm limited to a truck that only wants to do 1 or 2 loads before it has to go back in the shop.
Oh, I thought you were going to say before you have to go back home.
Not. I'm in
the shop's
Joplin.
at home, isn't that, Steve? The shop's at home.
Yeah, I gotta put back in the shop tomorrow. So I found something. I was doing a post trip and I found something that needs to be addressed. So
You drinking that green water again?
Mm-hmm.
Old Don Perrier.
Perrier.
Snorlord's high dollar, man. High dollar.
So what were you guys talking about? Rate per mile versus rate per day?
I made a comment on the headline. Rate per mile can put you out of business. If you base your trucking business on rate per mile, it can put you out of business.
That's a little hyperbolic, but okay.
Well, for example, because you were over at the Big Blue Star, and they all talk rate per mile, right?
Right.
Almost everybody. Okay, Steve. So if a guy says I need $3 a mile, I need $3 a mile, that includes deadhead and everything. Some of those guys will sit 2 or 3 days, 4 days.
Right. Yeah, I was guilty
down
of that.
Jacksonville, right? They sit down there 4 days, and then they'll deadhead 200 or 300 miles, and then I finally got my $3 a mile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. You know, I've hung out at the yard at the Fort Worth yard.
Yeah.
They called it the homeless shelter because there were guys that were literally on their laptops looking for that home run load. They would sit there for 2 or 3 days. And one of the things that I learned when I went to Schneider was about the rate per day. It was something that I picked up on. I mean, you taught me that a little bit, but for the most part, you kind of had to pick up on that with Schneider because, you just saw the revenue on the top right-hand corner of the load.
Right.
And so when I looked at that, like I keep track of my numbers, but I don't even know what my average rate per mile is right now. And of course, it's going to be high because I do these short runs.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what it is. As long as your as long as your cost per day is met, who cares what the rate per mile is?
Right. Well, I mean, like this load here, you could say that I deadheaded from Tulsa Springfield to Kansas City, it comes out as a 350-mile deadhead, but I had to go home because the truck had to go in the shop, and the first load I found was out of Kansas City. But if you start my day at Monday morning, it was still a good rate per day.
Right.
You know, the only thing that sucked was I couldn't find anything Friday because it was a safety issue that I had to deal with. So, but that's what I learned at Schneider was the rate per day, because I very rarely looked at the rate per mile. Now,
Right.
when I use Truck and Pro, it breaks down the rate per mile,
Right.
but then I would take the extra steps on my own math to look at what I was making per day, like how many days I have off. I have one of those little handy calendars that I keep track of how many days I was out. And I also did my estimated cost per day. So I try to make my business where I can survive off of 20 days a month, because you always got truck repairs, you've always got family issues. You know, you can't do 30 days a month. Even if you do that 3 months straight, you're going to take a week off. So you need to estimate your cost per day at 23 to 25 days, no more than 25. Because even if you do a 34 twice a month, that's every other weekend. That still comes out to 25 days.
Right. Big Face Trucker, get in here if you want to talk. You know, come on up in here. But see, when I was at the Big Blue Star, the homeless shelter in St. Augustine, Florida, right? We call that homeless shelter also. There'd be guys there to stay a week, because in the wintertime, they're like, well, I need this much rate per mile. And you just see them there day after day after day, and they're never getting that rate per mile. Then all of a sudden they get it one day and they think so I didn't haul for less than my rate per mile. But they didn't make any money.
Right.
You know?
You know, and when the market gets soft, when the market goes down, I'll admit it's tough. A load that you normally used to do for 1,000, now you're doing for 700. That's tough. But the name of the game is keeping moving. You know what I mean? Keep moving.
So if you train your brain not to think rate per mile, because that's how you always was taught in trucking, was cost per mile or rate per mile, right? That's everybody taught that the old school. That's what everybody talked about. No one talked about cost per day. Nobody. And if you do it if you train that brain about cost per day, it doesn't mess with you as much if you did that load for 1,000, but now you're doing it for 800, because you still know you're making your cost per day. Mm-hmm. You're making all your bills and then some.
Right.
Right. And then it opens up a whole lot more freight to look at that you passed over.
Well, if you live let's say you live in Orlando, Florida, if you went by rate per mile, you would never leave the house.
Right. You'd just be stuck there, man. Unless you took a load over to Tampa. Right? Tampa will get you the $4 or $5 a mile. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you'll get to go from I don't know, Lakeland to Haines City.
Right. Yeah, then you're in that endless loop. I see a couple of our guys floating around doing that stuff, and they're probably doing pretty well. But you got to know the area too. But
yeah, you got to know the area.
No, I don't really even pay attention to rate per mile. Ever since I switched to trucking office, every now and then I'll look at my P&L and see what my average rate is and all that, and it's kind of interesting. But after every load, I still figure out what I made per loaded or per all miles, just out of curiosity. But if you run nothing but short miles, then your cost per mile actually goes up because you're not running as much. But if you're running each day, I mean, I look at it per day. I mean, that's just something I've been doing since Schneider.
Right.
So.
Howdy, Thomas Wilson. Tire Killer wants to know, how do you incorporate the fuel in the rate per day? That's the variable. So you figure out your rate per day that you need to cover all house, home, taxes, trucking, everything. Divide it how many days you're going to stay out. And then you just look at a load, subtract what the fuel would be out of it. And then there you go. You know if it's profitable or not.
Yeah, you can also average out your fuel. So if you're averaging about $1,000 a week on a 6-day week in fuel, you can just like kind of, and you're running the same miles, same loads or whatever, you can probably just divide that by 6, right?
Right. All right, Snowlord, we got to read Big Face's comment. Let me see here. Here it is. I'm half asleep, just come from the gym. How can you go to the gym and come out of there half asleep? How can you do that, Big Face Trucker? Are you sleeping at the gym? I'm trying to figure out how you go to the gym and come out half asleep. You know what he did? He probably went to a gym that has sauna, like a sauna or something in it, right?
They probably had a sauna, and they were probably playing the Carpenters on the Muzak.
Oh, yeah.
That would put me to sleep.
Put him to sleep. Yeah, I can see that happen. Robbie says, do not ask me rate per mile here at Prime. Ha, 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 ha. Hopefully, in a 4-week, get finally my authority. Don't ask him his rate per mile. All right, we won't. What's your rate per mile, Rob? He's chasing those young girls over there in Conyers, says Thomas Wilson.
Well, so what do you tell a driver? I talked to a driver today who's been making a mileage rate as a lease operator. If you're making, let's say, $1.10 plus fuel surcharge, what would that be? $1.30? Let's call it $1.30. Your biggest variable will be fuel. So if it's a lighter load, you'll make a little bit more money. So, see, $1.30 a mile, you would have to do 600 miles a day.
Well, how much are you gonna say his fuel is?
Down to $7.80 a day.
What do you say his fuel is? 30 cents a mile? What's it gonna be?
Oh, I think fuel's is easily 40 cents a mile right now.
Okay, so if he's getting $1.30, so he's at 90 cents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if he has a whatever, $300 a day is what he needs, right? He's gonna have to do.
So,
he's gonna have to do 320 something miles a day.
Yeah.
And if you don't make it, and then if he does 0 miles that day and didn't get no money, then the next day he's got to do 640, and so on.
It's easy to get in the hole, right?
Right. And that's where I always tell everybody, if you're going to do a lease purchase, you don't do it at a mileage company. You do it only on percentage, and you must be able to pick your own freight. Because the dude behind the phone that's getting paid $10 or $12 an hour doesn't care what your bills are. He don't care. He's got a boss that says, we need these loads moved. And if you're in line for that crappy short mile load, guess who's getting the crappy short mile load?
Thomas has got a good question about how do you figure 3 months broke down. Thomas, my truck's going back in the shop too, so I feel your pain a little bit. I can't do more than a run without an issue. But how do you figure that? Someone takes 3 months off. How do you figure that?
So you can answer it.
I can?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
Okay, well, first of all, if you have a rainy day fund, right? So if you're working and you need $300 a day, you're working Monday through Friday, you're taking weekends off, right? So all the extra money you make. So Snorlord takes one of those $1,200 loads that only goes a few hundred miles. It's $960. He nets $850 but he only needs how much you need a day, Steve?
300.
300. So he's at 550 to the good, right? If you do that, let's say three weeks or 3 days in a row, you're at 1650 to the good, which is basically 5 days, right? So you save that up, and then you got 3 months there. So if something happens, you're broken down for all 3 months, you're taken out of that reserve fund. Now, if you only got a little bit and you had to borrow to get through that, well, then guess what? You add those extra onto your days and you make it back.
Right.
But
Yeah,
if you do it right now in today's society, in the rates, you can make 3 times what your average is that you need when you're out there running. But what happens is people don't do that, right? They don't put it away because they're making more. What do they do with it? What do they do with that money?
Oh, well, I was just about to make the point that most people cannot. I mean, Thomas is in a good situation. Most people, though, cannot last 3 months with no money coming in on their business. They won't survive.
Right. Right. Freight Shaker says, what's he say here? That's a hard thing, though. I've been looking for 2 years. There's no company out there that lease trucks that allow you to run the spot market and pay percentage. Well, Schneider doesn't run the spot market, but Schneider lets you pick your own freight, and they lease trucks. That's one of the only places I do a full maintenance or a lease from, because you're able to pick your own freight. Right, Steve?
Yeah, Advanced will they run the spot market and have lease trucks, but you got to be in line for the lease trucks.
Right.
So, and I know a reefer company that will do it, but they are a rarity. But I mean, they're out there. You just got to dig a little bit.
Thomas, you can't. He takes 27 out of his account so far, but that was also camping. Parking.
Yeah. Good old Thomas.
He throws that in there, don't he?
Yep. Everybody's camping. You're camping. You're in the camper.
I am. Traveloco runs a spot market. They do. They also lease trucks. Do they not?
Yeah. Read the fine print, though. Read the fine print.
There's a lot of fine print.
Yeah. Whenever you lease a truck from the company you're signed on with, you have to look at the costs. You know, like a lot of people will dog Schneider Finance for the price of their trucks, but then they'll turn around and do a lease that's probably even worse at another company. You can't take the truck with you, or if you get fired, you lose the truck. That's the thing about Schneider Finance, is if you get fired from Schneider for dropping a trailer or doing something stupid, you can take your truck with you. It's going to cost you a little bit, but you can take the truck with you.
Right.
And a lot of companies don't do that. I know so many people that got a lease purchase, and then 6 months from them paying it off, they get fired, and they don't have the money saved back to just buy it out, because you get 30 days legally to buy that truck out. They have to give you that, and most people can't do that, and then they end up losing the truck. So all that money you invested for 3 years is gone. You know, at least with Schneider Finance, you can take the truck with you and keep your investment.
DB Knock and Beat says, who knows a good company for managing compliance? I use my driver files. So if you want to know what they are, just go to bigregradionetwork.com. Go down to the yellow Kenworth you see down there. Click on it. That takes you right to their website. It's $5.99 per driver. Freight Shaker says, yes, I would have worded it differently. Now, companies with a legitimate system with reasonable fixed costs that let you run the spot market. This company, if I lease trucks, but I don't lease trucks. I could, but not now, because who has trucks? Dealers don't have trucks.
Yeah, it's getting. Here's my prediction, Jeff. The rates are going to be sky high, and they're only going to get higher. But the way you're going to survive this winter is survival of the fittest.
Right.
With the parts and the repairs. Because as more and more trucks go out, that's going to create even a harder capacity for the brokers. So we'll be able to we'll be writing checks galore. But your truck has to keep running. That's the name of the game at this point.
Kenworth Peterbilt has about 60,000 trucks waiting in line for repairs for depth sensoring. Now, luckily, one of our contractors that had a driver drive one of his trucks had the same model sitting there at his house, and he just took the sensor off his truck and sent it overnight down to Florida, got the truck running the next day to keep rolling, luckily. Now, they can reprogram it. It's only good for a little while, the PACCAR motor. They haven't got the update to do the Cummins yet, but Kenworth and PACCAR, they can reprogram it to not recognize the depth tank sensor, so it won't shut down. It won't go into D rate. But it's only good for a certain amount of time, a couple of weeks or something like that. Then you got to get it done again.
Yeah, and most people, if they're waiting, like Thomas Wilson, he's legitimately waiting 3 months for his parts. Most people can't survive that. I always tell people you need about 3 months of truck expenses in the bank, and you need about 3 months of home expenses in the bank.
But here's what
Here's
what I looked at when I looked at those stats, and it happened to our guy. And look at this, Snowlord. Go on eBay, type in that sensor. It's there. I seen this. I seen the guy's name that was selling it. Of course, you don't know who it is. It's kind of like YouTube, right? It's got a name. And he wanted $6,000 for a $300 sensor, but he had a bunch of sensors. And guess what it said right after the comment of it, the headline: warranted.
What?
Warranted. So who can sell a sensor and warranty it? There's only one place. A dealer. So these dealers are selling these sensors for anywhere from $1,000 to $6,000 on eBay and not putting them in the trucks that are sitting in their lot. The customer's waiting to get them fixed.
Yeah, I've given up on humanity for the most part. So
because they're capitalizing on a situation, right? Kind of like you go into Facebook, you look up trailers, right? 53-foot dry van. You see a 2012, some guy got it for $45,000. Come on.
Oh yeah.
Look at the Schneider trailers. They were selling them for $15,000 for certain ones. Now they want $30,000 for the same trailer that they sold for $15,000.
Yeah, that's take advantage of the market. Look, I agree that prices, should fluctuate with the market, but I think people are trying to make up for when nobody was buying equipment because the rates were so crappy. Right. Looking back, that's when I should have bought another trailer or a couple of trailers or maybe even a different truck because now that same stuff is 30%, sometimes 40% higher.
Yeah, that's what I heard, on the orange trailers, and even some of these other big mega carriers. You've seen that they're not selling hardly any of them anymore because they ran out of them, right? People are still paying the money. Yeah, I know what some of our guys paid for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we got one of the guys in here right now that bought a Schneider trailer, and I forget what price he paid for it, but you can go on their website. You just go on their website and see what they're selling them for.
Yeah, but that's going to be the name of the game, is survival of the fittest. So and it's not going to be the rates. That's the thing. Everybody's concentrating on the rates. The rates go down. What are you going to do? The rates go down, but it may not be the rates that takes you out.
Right.
So,
let's see if we can find a trailer for sale.
I doubt it. But regardless of the market conditions, and regardless that this is unprecedented, this problem that we have right now,
yeah,
that's why it's always good to have 3 months of everything in the bank, because you never know what's going to happen. It could be something outside of your control. It could be something unforeseen, like a hurricane went through your neighborhood, and you got to deal with that for 2 months before you get back on the road.
You can see that there's overpriced trucks. A 2017 Freightliner, 600,000 miles, $72,000. That's a lot of money, is it not? Is that not a lot of money?
Yeah.
Let's look at trailers. They got any trailers?
No.
They got tankers. Yeah, they're not, no dry vans whatsoever on there anymore. Here's a 2016 tanker for $83,000.
Buy it.
I don't think so. What am I going to haul in it?
Liquid.
Liquid. But they don't have any trailers for sale either. They're all out. Trailers are more than trucks, says Eddie. You got that right. Right now it is. If you, Snorlord, if you knew this is better than Bitcoin. So John Armstrong, you fell asleep too early, because we're going to give you the lowdown. 2 years ago, Snorlord, if you knew this, you could have bought as many 2009 and 10s for $5,000 as you wanted. You could have went to the bank and got $200,000 worth and bought yourself 20 $10,000 trailers, and guess what? You'd be a millionaire today.
Yeah.
Because you could have sold all those for high dollar.
Right. Yeah. Well, I beat myself up. So.
Yeah, you should have gotten the trailer business. Didn't you say you were going to get in the trailer business a couple years ago?
I wanted to, but I had debt that I had to pay down, and I didn't really have the capital to do it, and that's on me for not having my crap together. So now I've got everything all together. Now I can't find a trailer. I looked at one last weekend. It needed about $15,000 worth of work just to be presentable, so it wasn't worth it.
A guy traded 4 trucks in, made $40,000 on each truck. Right, and if you knew that this was going to happen to car sales, you could have went out and bought 2-year-old cars, a bunch of them, and made money on those too.
You got the infamous Just Trucking in here.
Yeah, he's in here. He made a few comments.
But I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting year.
Yep.
I downloaded this marine traffic, and it's amazing how many ships are in each of the harbors.
Oh, there's a ton of ships. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, there's like 88. A friend of mine sent me a link that there's 88 in Long Beach right now. That's the highest that they've ever seen at one time. That's crazy.
Yeah, sitting there because they can't get unloaded. No one's working.
I think they're overwhelmed. I think that's, someone brought up the point about noticing detention and layover increasing. It seems like if you go to one place, they're overwhelmed. Like Walmart's supply chain is all kind of jacked up right now. You can see it when you go into the stores, but you can see it when you go to the DCs. A lot of them are like telling you to drop your trailer, you know?
There you go, Store Lord.
Good deal.
That's better than potato chips.
Definitely.
But I think I don't have any more. I've been an hour. That's good enough. You got anything else you want to say?
No,
how about you go live and we can watch you?
I was getting ready to go live when I saw that you were live.
Good, you go live. We'll watch you.
Okay.
You know. Everybody will go to Store Lord's channel.
Yeah, I don't know if I got anything to say though, but we'll try it if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go to Store Lord's channel. He's more interesting anyway. He'll get the guitar out, maybe. We don't know. We might learn something about this. Why is this better than chips? Is this good too, Store Lord, or should I have chocolate candy bar?
Oh, that's better than the chocolate candy bar. That's for sure.
Well, I want to make sure I'm doing it right here, or starting off right. You know, I want to make sure. But I don't have no Perrier. How do you say Perrier? You know, whatever that stuff that foo drink you drink. The Don.
It's a great soda replacement. Trust me.
Oh, because it got the fizz?
Yeah.
But without the sugar?
Without the sugar.
And without all that sweetener stuff?
No sweetener, no nothing. Just flavoring and carbonated water.
Awesome. Maybe I'll pick one up and try it. Tire Killer likes that. Well, at least he's not drinking it with a sissy stick. Everybody knows what a sissy stick is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was replying to a comment there. All right, Jeff, I'm going to get off here.
Yeah, I'm going to go watch Snorlord. There's a guy on YouTube named Snorlord. Go check him out.